Evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Municipal Council to order. Please join me for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Thank you. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're operating under suspended rules, so we can have some special guests who are here to talk about a wonderful project going on in the city. And this is from the volunteers that are working on the monument to recognize the global war on terror, GWOT. So, we'll recognize our Veterans Agent, Ben Quell.
I'm going to do that.
Hi, good evening.
Evening, Ben.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Tiny little microphone, okay. As many of you know, I'm not only a member of the Global War on Terrorism Committee, I'm also serve as the Veteran Service Officer here for the City of Attleboro. I've been doing so for a number of years now. Prior to working as the Veterans Agent here, I was the Veterans Agent for a number of years in Hanover. And there were times when people would ask me when we're going to do something to recognize the global war on terrorism, but at that point in time, it was still what seemed like premature. We still had active operations going on around the world, especially in places like Afghanistan. However, you know, as we all remember the final pullout in Afghanistan and how difficult that was for us to remember, it still, in many ways, represented sort of a closing of the gate and a finality to the global war on terrorism. And so many communities across the country quickly sprung into action to start thinking about how they're going to remember what has now been known as GWOT, the global war on terror. And I'm not saying that we're behind the power curve, but I'm just saying that many communities here in Massachusetts have erected monuments for this specific purpose. So the first thing I did was I approached our civic organizations like the VFW and asked what they thought of the idea, and they were all behind it. So at that point, I approached my boss, the mayor, and we sat down for a long discussion, and she was, you know, behind it 100%. And what she suggested that I do, because she's been through these projects before, is to establish an ad hoc committee that would encompass all members, different members of our community, many of which have experience with this, which I think was a terrific idea, because being an ad hoc committee, it allowed us to pair with our existing veteran civic organizations to establish things like 501Cs. We don't have to, because we paired with them. It also means that we can go right into planning and fundraising through these organizations. So a lot of hands went up, and we selected a lot of members of our community, and I think we're well represented of this city. It's about 11 or 12 of us. Many of them are here today and will speak to you. It is chaired by Julie Hall and Laura DeSimone, veterans themselves. Also members are Brian Donato, Frank Cook, Shane Rio, who's our current commander of our VFW, Nate Bowie, who's a college student, who's been very involved with us, Ed Noel, Josh Beauvais, Paul Jakes, Scott Mercier, Walter Thibodeau, who heads up the American Legion in the south part of the city. So at this point, we have made numerous meetings. I don't know how many meetings we've had, but we've had a lot, and we had to first kind of come up with the idea, the concept, what we want to look like, what we want to say, and of course there's a lot of opinions on that. And it went through a lot of changes, and once we really felt like we had an understanding of what we were looking for, then we had to decide where we want it. And we looked at a lot of different options, a lot of different areas of the city. It just seemed like that beautiful commons we already have was a place that it could incorporate itself very well, and something that could be really enjoyed by the city and have a lot of visibility. But we had to get approval from our parks. So we had 3 or 4 different meetings throughout the months with our Parks Commission, and every time we'd go back, we'd have more information for them, more information for them. And we feel like we are at the point now where we are ready to start getting things in gear, start raising money. Prior to doing that, though, we have to understand that at the very end of this, you, as a council, have to accept this property and what it is, where it's going, you know, the name of it. So, you know, we want to be proactive, so we felt before we even start that, we want to come to you and give you a real good understanding as to what this is going to look like, what it's going to cost, where it's going to go, get your feedback, answer your questions, concerns, and what have you. So with that, I'd like to, if I could, introduce Frank Cook, who's been instrumental in this process already. He went out and he found us a great contractor with tremendous experience in these types of civic monument projects, and he is going to give you an understanding of what this is going to look like. Any questions at this point? Any concerns? Okay, thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Ben.
Sure, I'll just leave this up here for a minute.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Good evening. As Ben mentioned, my name is Frank Cook. I think most of you know who I am, having spent most of my life, it seems, in these council chambers over the last 3 decades. As Ben had mentioned, the Global War on Terrorism Monument Committee has been making great strides. Hold on a second, okay? And as Ben had mentioned, we have been meeting with the Park Commission because they have to give us permission in terms of where this is going to go. So at this point in time, as Ben had mentioned, the ideal spot that we thought and the Park Commission agreed to was on the Veterans Common over here, slightly to the left of the current obelisks that sit there. As you can see, it's over in this direction. It's been superimposed on the picture so you can get a general idea of where it's going to go. And as mentioned, the monument honors service members of Attleboro who served in the global war on terrorism, which began after the attacks of 9/11 back in 2001. And the term of Attleboro is an all-inclusive of service members from Attleboro, whether they were living here at the time they went in, they're living here now, or sometime in the future they're going to move in. We want them to know, as a city, how much we appreciate their sacrifice, their duty, their courage in protecting the cause of freedom. So this is a monument for all those who served in the global war on terrorism, again, past, present, and future. I know there's at least one person in this, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, one member of the council, oh no, 2 members of the council, I believe, served during the global war on terrorism, I believe. You didn't. You're a veteran, but you didn't serve during that time. But I believe Councilor Kobus.
I got it right at Desert Storm.
Desert Storm, okay. So this began at that point. The monument itself, and you know, one picture is worth 1,000 words. But one of the things that I've learned through the years is that if one picture is worth 1,000 words, one model is worth 10,000 words. So along that end, we have, I know you all can't see it, but a rough idea of what this model will look like. Now later, at the end of the presentation, we have a handout that will give to you, which gives you a lot more details about it. This was the original conceptual design of the monument. It has changed a little bit in terms of in the center, there's now, as you can see here, there's now a 3rd panel. But the way that on this monument, the left panel over here, on the left side, there's an American flag. There is a freedom quotation that connects freedom with the events of 9/11. And there's also, there's only 5 on this, but there are 6 on here. There's an insignia. It's the insignia of each of the 6 military branches are there. And ideally, these are going to be recessed. There's going to be a black background to them. So all the branches will be represented. These are on a common base, or they will be on a common base, slightly angled, the 2 end panels. The panel on the left, as you face it, will have the city seal surrounded by a Grecian memorial wreath. And then there will be an inscription explaining why the monument was erected and its connection to the tragic events of 9/11. In the center panel, again, we're going to have a panel here with just a connection. We knew, by the way, in developing this idea, that once we got an artist involved, there would be structural and aesthetic concerns that we were going to have to deal with. And this, I can tell you from making the model, it was structurally difficult enough in a little model. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like on a life-size model. So anyway, so that has now been changed. But in the center panel, there will be a globe of the world etched into it, again symbolizing the global nature of the global war on terrorism. And then there will be the title of it. There will be a city recognition relative to the fact that a grateful city remembers, and also the dedication date. One of the things as we were working on this, and it's been mentioned over several meetings, we were discussing the concept and what would we like to have on this. And from all of these thoughts that were presented over several meetings, it was then decided to come up with a representation of that. So one of the things that was very important to the committee was that we make it very clear that this monument represents something very specific, not just the fact that members of the community served during the global war on terrorism, but what did each of these elements stand for? So the three panels represent the three American sites that were attacked in 9/11, New York, Washington, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The top height of the side panels at its highest point is approximately 9 feet. And the distance from left to right is representing the 9th month, September. And the distance across is roughly 11 feet, representing the 11th day of the month. And again, the two panels on the end, originally the idea was also representing the World Trade Center towers that fell on that particular day. The monument, again, you can see there's a slight different color between the first one and the more recent one. It's actually going to be, and I'll pass this around. I'll let you know right now it weighs about 8 pounds, so be careful. It's the only one we have, so please don't break it. I have another presentation tomorrow. But this is Barry, I should probably get behind this. This is Barry Gray granite. It's quarried in Vermont, and one of the concerns that the committee had was we wanted to make sure that we chose material that would be very durable, and it would also be easy to maintain in the future, because all things have to be maintained and taken care of, as we learned with the Civil War Monument a couple of years ago. So this is Barry Gray granite, and this will be the type of stone that will be used. I'm going to pass it around. Again, it weighs about 8 pounds, so just be careful with it, please. And the person that Ben had mentioned, that we have a person lined up to make the monument for us, and that person is Robert Scher. Robert Scher is the owner of Skylight Studios up in Woburn, and he is a highly regarded, award-winning artist. And his company up in Woburn, Skylight Studios, is one of the largest and most active studios of its type in the country. Its clients go around the world. Some of the projects that Robert Scher has been involved in have included restorations of, for example, the old State House in Boston, the memorial to the 54th Mass opposite the State House there on Beacon Street. He won an award in the mid-90s for his heroic size relief sculpture of George Washington that is at the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. Some of the sculptures and monuments he has worked on or made include, if you've ever driven through Norwood Center, the Protectors of the American Family is one that he did. In Boston, he made a memorial to Cy Young on the site of the first World Series in Boston. A statue of General John Stark up in Bennington, Vermont, during the American War for Independence. He's also gone out of New England, not only to Washington, D.C., working on the National Cathedral, for example, there, but also to Yankee Stadium, where he was chosen to make a memorial to Joe DiMaggio. Keeping it local, he also did a relief of portrait of Red Auerbach that is in TD North today. He also did the Irish Famine Memorial, which is down in Providence, the Strand Theatre Fire Memorial in Brockton, as well as the Puerto Rican Veterans Memorial in Boston. And that's just a few of the many ones that he has done. Some of you may remember, a few of you on the council when I was on, and we had, after a long time that I was pushing for, we came up with the money and we restored the Sailors and Soldiers Monument down at Capron Park, also known as the Civil War Monument. That had been put up in 1908. It had been moved down there in the 20s. It hadn't been worked on since. And some of you may remember the condition that it was in. And Robert Schur actually was the sculptor and the restorer that we brought in to redo those monuments. And then in 2019, we had a little dedication as part of the Memorial Day celebration. So that's a little bit about the monument. I have a handout, the committee has a handout for you, which gives you a lot more detail about the monument. Samples of what it's going to look like and so forth are included in it. The last thing I want to mention before I introduce Laura is that at some point, and it's been had alluded to, the council will have a role in this process. We are looking at, when we have the monument completed, of having a formal dedication. We would hope that all of you would attend. We would expect that, I'm sure that on the agenda will be the council president or the council president's designee to say a few appropriate remarks at that time. And at some point, my understanding is, as has happened with other monuments, the city council will have to cast an affirmative vote to accept it on behalf of the city. So then the cities can take care of it, moving forward and so forth. So that's just a little bit about it. We're very excited about this. I want to thank you for your votes to establish the ad hoc committee that the mayor had requested. I'm not going to take any questions right now because Laura may be able to answer some of the ones you may be anticipating. But I do want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions that aren't answered tonight, feel free to reach out to me, okay? Thank you.
President Cook.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. Laura DeSimone. So I'm here tonight to kind of cover everything else that everybody hasn't talked about yet, the nuts and bolts. The Attleboro Global War on Terror Monument Committee is a dedicated group of citizens brought together by Mayor Kathleen DeSimone. We have a shared mission to honor and commemorate the brave service members who served, are still serving, and will serve in the nation's largest and longest ongoing conflict. Our committee is composed of service members and civilians who are committed to creating a lasting tribute in our great city to the courage and sacrifice of all who have served in the global war on terror. Through the generosity of our community and supporters, we're working to fund and then build a monument that will stand as a symbol of remembrance, gratitude, and respect. And this monument will serve as a gathering place for reflection, healing, education, and it will ensure that the stories and sacrifices of our service members are never forgotten. So as far as the cost, right, that's what we all want to know, right? We're currently finalizing the project costs. The expected costs of the monument itself are between $65,000 and $75,000. There are associated expenses, for example, transportation from the Vermont here, installation, and then some of those are variable depending on if we can get donations in kind and who we need to hire to get those. Similarly, there are costs for building, in-ground foundation, and landscaping. Some of these costs may be reduced by using local sources, including park department capabilities. There's also going to be a bench. This proposed bench will cost between $2,900 and $3,800, depending on the length and the inscription. The bench estimate does not include transportation and installation, and the bench will sit in front of the monument and able to, in order to allow reflection. The GWAT monument will be 100% funded through private donations. So fundraising efforts will begin soon, very soon, tonight, if you want to pull out your wallet, I'm just kidding. But not, with a pledge goal of raising $100,000 by July 2025. And in the packets that everybody will get when we're done, It will contain our donation letter, so you'll be able to see how we're proposing this to folks throughout the city. As far as so this kind of kicks off our media blitz, okay? So we're officially ready to begin fundraising, and as such, we're beginning out our mission to the public beginning this week. On Thursday, which is October 17th, you can tune in to WARA at 8 o'clock to listen to our interview with Dominic Catoya. That same day, I'll be interviewed by James Friedman on a AACS news piece that will be aired later in the month. And we hope to also get an article in the Sun Chronicle. George Rhodes, you know, just saying. We'll be ready. We'll be ready for you when you're ready for us. All of these are opportunities for us to get the word out about this really important monument. As far as the projected timeline, our projected timeline to dedicate the GWAT monument is September 11th, 2025. This is, of course, contingent on the fundraising effort, and plans will be developed for a formal dedication of the monument on or about that date. And what I have for you now is the packets. Okay, thank you. So in these packets, there are various pictures of the monument in its location, zoomed in, details with all the measurements of the monument, extensive information about our wonderful monument maker, Robert Schur, and the last page is our is the donation letter, which we'll be getting out. So before I conclude, I just want to give another shout out to all of our committee members, our veterans agent, Ben Quell, who is in the United States Army. I'm one co-chair. My other half is Julie Hall. She is an Air Force veteran. I'm an Army veteran. And our members, Brian Donato, who's here. Okay. Shane Rio, who is not able to be here. He's at the VFW post right now conducting a meeting. Walter Thibodeau, Air Force. Okay. Neil Bowie is a college student and a neighbor of mine, very civically minded, so we wanted to get him involved. Frank Cook, Scott Mercier, a resident in Attleboro, and an associate member, Paul Jakes, who is also an Army veteran. So with that, we thank you for your time. We thank you for your anticipated support. And we hope to see all of you at the dedication ceremony. And we are ready to accept funds. Did I already say that? Just saying. Okay. So that's all I got.
So thank you all. This was a wonderfully put together presentation. The only ask I have is let's not wait to see you again until September of next year. Would love to have you back at any time, a couple times between now and then to
Sure.
update us on the
We can come
project.
in to give like status reports. Yeah, that's fine.
Open invitation.
Yeah.
The work you guys are doing.
It's
is
very
phenomenal.
exciting work. It's, yeah, so, all right, thank you. Appreciate it,
to the
President
board. Thank
Delizio.
you to the, thank you to the volunteers as well.
Okay, it looks like it's a
I won't be
question.
entertaining questions at this time because we do have a full agenda. So thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
your time. Keep up the
Thank
great
you.
work. While they're cleaning up, I'm going to entertain a motion to recess so we can go into finance that has one piece of business before we go into public hearings. So, is that a second? Yes. Okay, second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are now recessed.
I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order at 7:09. The committee is myself, Councilor Reynolds, Councilor Tavares. We have one piece of business. From the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to adopt a dual system of classification of real estate taxation in accordance with appropriate general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Motion is in order. This was just an item that I neglected to vote out last week. This is just to adopt the dual classification system.
Can you
President
just
Delizio.
explain the importance that, one, this has to be done in order to,
So this needs to be done in order to adopt the tax shift. This needs to be done first, and then we adopt the tax shift. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Pass. Move to adjourn at 7:10.
Second.
Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Municipal Council back to order at 7:10. I would now entertain a motion to approve the records of September 17th and October 1st of 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Madam Clerk, will you please read the notice of the first public hearing?
Certainly. Public hearing regarding proposal to declare a 5,496 acre parcel identified as Assessors Plat number 115, lot number 1B, a portion of Highland Park, with a current assessed value of $977,400 as surplus and available for disposition.
Thank you. So we're going to go into this public hearing, and I just want to remind everyone, the purpose of tonight's public hearing is to discuss the disposition of the property. As of this time, there is no specific project that is attached to it. We welcome everyone's thoughts, but we'll ask that we keep the comments close to about the disposition of the property at Highland Park. Madam Clerk, was there a sign-in sheet that went around as well?
Yes, there is a sign-in sheet.
Okay, and tonight we're, have a sign-in sheet just for speakers to ensure that we properly capture their name and addresses for the record. That being said, we'll go into those who are in favor of this, those who are against, and then those who are neither for nor against. So that being said, we would first have anyone who would like to speak in favor come to the podium and just give us your name. Anyone who would like to speak in favor. This is about the disposition of Highland Park, the country club at Highland Park, correct?
Thank you, Honorable Body, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill Larson. I live at 142 Fairway Drive. I am an abutter to Highland Park. Thank you for specifying what, so I'll keep my comments to do that. So very briefly, I think what you have in front of you is an opportunity for a compromise for the city of Attleboro. As we're not speaking to any particular project, I won't. But I think that is the mindset of what you're going to find in front of you.
Excuse me, Ms. Lawson, you able to
Yes.
speak into the microphone? I think there are some folks having some issues.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, as I was saying, I believe what you have in front of you is an opportunity for a compromise for the city of Attleboro. And I hope that you consider it that way in your deliberation. And having said that, that's the extent of my comments. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and have a good night.
Thank you. Do we have any clarifying questions for the speaker? Councilor Fowler?
Can you tell us, thank you. Can you tell us, please, what is the compromise between? Or how it is a compromise?
I'm going to defer
I'll
to
allow
the
some
president.
leeway.
Okay,
Allow
thank you.
leeway.
So I think there are going to be people who want to see nothing happen. And I think there are people who are willing to listen to the possibility of the city of Attleboro getting something if they're willing to compromise and listen to the possibility of maybe receiving something at a very reduced rate. I'll try not to go any deeper.
Well, I think it's fair to talk about what we know, what the, kind of, what you're alluding to would be, there's been talk of the senior center being there and potential housing. Just want to be careful because there is no project currently, but I appreciate the question and I appreciate the answer.
I wish tact was a better part of my nature.
You're just fine. You're doing just fine. Any additional questions for Mr. Lawson? Seeing none.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you,
time
Mr.
and
Lawson.
consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak against?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am against the disposition because I think it invites a slippery slope in some gray areas for future disposition and future parcels within Attleboro. I think that when we bought Highland Park, there was an agreement that there would never be that there wouldn't be any housing put on it. So I feel very strongly that rezoning the land for housing is not within the parameters of that promise.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any, Council Reynolds?
I'd like to just clarify, it's not being donated. We're not donating the land.
No, but you plan it, but the land is essentially going to be rented or disposed of or sold.
No sold, never sold.
So,
Leased.
so just a point of information, I believe the way it's coming down with the intention of the administration is to lease the space. But again, before we get there, we have to vote whether or not we're gonna dispose of the property, put it out for disposition, which I think your comments are so relative to your point of view on that.
Thank you.
And can we just have your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Laura Abrams, 35 Cumberland Street.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Arrest Arcani, 95 Mechanic Street, Unit 1, right across from the entrance to Highland Park. I'm very much in favor of a community center for our senior citizens, but I'm very much opposed to building a commercial housing unit on top of it. Needless to say, a new senior center is needed. You know, the seniors have long outgrown the old fire station that was built in 1925. They've been there since, I think, the 70s. Frankly, building a commercial enterprise at the Highlands site reneges on the city's promise to its citizens to keep the area green, which it did when you bought the property. I need to mention that traffic is already an unaddressed problem in that area, especially with the speeders on Berwick Road. You know, the city stations a police officer there for hours during the frequent cross-country meets to make sure nobody gets killed. Let's note that the citizens of Attleboro have made an investment in preserving this invaluable green area in the city. From 1990 until the city purchased it, to ensure that the area stayed green, the city taxed Highland Country Club at only 25% of its assessed value. That totals $2.7 million in taxes that were not collected so that that property would stay clean. Now that's a lot of teachers, that's a lot of public safety people, that's a good down payment on a senior center. We're invested. There are other ways to finance a new senior center at the site, and you've heard some of them. I think it's time for the city to keep its promise to its citizens and to its senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Leslie, thank you. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Martha Ianazzi Conti, 100 Berwick Road. I am not a direct abutter to this property, but I am opposed to the disposition and housing at that location.
Do we have any questions for the speaker? Thank you. Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Good evening. My name's Rebecca Beard. I live at 6 Franklin Street, about a quarter of a mile from Highland Park. I walk there daily with my dogs. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm against this piece. Our concerns kind of stem, I kind of speak for my neighborhood, so our concerns kind of stem threefold. The first one is related just to our natural resources, specifically our water. We're in a drought. We've been in a drought for years. We have water issues in the city. We know we've tried to combat them, but all the additional housing and building and development just increases that. I know in our house, at least a couple times a month, you have brown water. You can't drink it, you take a shower, and it smells. You know, we had apartments built on Mechanic Street. They were under 100 apartments. We've had less water pressure. I mean, there's just only so many natural resources to go around. That's some of the concerns, because My street, we're all gardeners. We all love our environment. We all take care of it. We ration our water in our house. We're really careful about it. So that's one of our major concerns is our natural resources. Traffic has been mentioned. The traffic around that area. We live on Franklin Street. It's a little street. We have people speeding up and down. I can't tell you how many times my mother and I, walking the dogs, have almost been hit. Berwick Ave is sometimes like a race cars. If we have housing up there, we just can't even speak to the amount of traffic that we're gonna have. We have it, we have schools in the area, we have school buses, we have kids walking to school all the time. You put a couple hundred apartments up there, we're just gonna have so many kids at risk because there's just not enough crossing guards to go around. I love our crossing guards, my dogs say hi every day. And there's that concern as well as, keeping up the roads and keeping up all of the, sidewalks and all of those things. And just the environmental impact. Since Highland has been a green space, I walk it every day, so I've seen the change over the years. We have actual native cottontail rabbits that have had to be reintroduced in Rhode Island because they are native and they've been chased out by other cottontails. There's a huge population of them up at Highland and it's wonderful. We have, hawks, we have birds, you have turtles, you have those 2 ponds that are wonderful. You've seen what leaving green space does. When you let, ecology take its course, you let it be and let it do what it's supposed to. I agree, we need a senior center that's not in downtown. My mother lives with me, she's a senior. But I don't think taking Highland and trying to make it somewhere where we're gonna have potential housing because of traffic, resources, safety, as well as the impact on our natural resources and the environment. It just, we don't feel that that's the right place for it. And as somebody who lives right down the street, I kind of speak for our little tiny street that has 6 houses on it. So I thank you for your time and listening to me. So,
Do we have any questions for the speaker? Mr. Lavoy? Not a question, but if I could just make a clarifying point. Just that this entails the pre-developed portion and not the nearly 80 acres of green space. This is solely the 5 acres of already developed portion that is commercial on the right side of the property.
the housing, like the old buildings?
This is just about the country club piece of it, the building that's already there, that structure. For disposition.
Yeah, I mean, the country club's housing should have, that should have been taken care of years ago. I mean, when you have The Walking Dead filming it was great. I saw them all the time. I walked up and every day I saw new different things because, they were filming up there and they were great. But it's just for the people that live in the neighborhood, it's just tough on us, so.
Sure.
And as taxpayers, it's kind of tough when you're the homeowners. So I thank you very much.
Do we have any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who would like to speak against? Yep, please make your way to the podium.
My name is George Piggott. I live at 24 Burnt Drive, which is directly across from the high school, the new high school. So I was a member of the commission that former Mayor Paul Heroux set up when they decided to establish the use of that land and how to establish that use. And I realized at the time it was strictly a non-binding thing, and there was some document that was provided and probably preserved somewhere, and I'm not sure what that document says to this day. I did read it at one point, but I really strongly think that if it wasn't explicit, it was definitely implicit that there would be no housing in that location at all. Part of the purpose back then for buying the land, and I was part of that population that was convincing the mayor, or tried to convince the mayor that the city should buy it, okay, because I believe he first came out and didn't want anything to do with it. But the rationale back then was to provide options for the city. And I think that history will show right now, the last 5 years, that some of those options have been exercised, and it's been a very, very good use of that land. I live so close to it, I see people roaming that area all the time, and I'm afraid that this is what I call developer creep. You start opening up Pandora's box there, and it never fails. Developers will never let up on trying to develop this area. It's low-lying fruit, but you have increased population coming into the city, and that's a case for the need for more and more open space. And what we're doing is we're going in the opposite direction. We need to reuse, we need to recycle, we need to repurpose, and we know that there's a couple of schools out there, or at least one school and maybe another school about to be, that will be vacant. I don't think that we've done a good enough job of actually trying to look for these smaller parcels that we could recycle. Okay, so, I mean, just for logical and argument's sake, why Highland Park? And when I talk about development creep, developer creep, and I look at Highland Park, why did we choose Highland Park? Why didn't we choose Ponset Hewitt? Why didn't we choose Capron Park? Well, some of these, like Capron Park probably is in trust of some type, where there are documents in place now that prevent any kind of a development. But that just sets a precedent. That's my point, that if you start developing this thing in any small way and it's not preserved through legal documents, that it's just going to continue and it's going to completely spoil the whole makeup of that area. I guess that's really, that's about it. Oh, actually, let me speak just a little bit to the process. I mean, one of the councilors, and I think it was Pamela, mentioned that this has to be maybe a commission, another commission of people and inputs. And if I look back on history here, you know, a lot of the mayors, Mayor Paul Heroux had the foresight and the vision, and we use that term, a new vision, right, to at least get 20 people involved in this whole process, and we spoke and we put the document in place. As I said, Councilor Pamela has mentioned some kind of a commission. Mayors like, well, Judy Robbins and Paul Heroux and several other mayors prior to that got citizens involved. Back in the 60s, there was the League of Women Voters, and there was the JCs and things like that. You had a lot of citizen input. And that's not to say that there isn't any citizen input now, because I don't pay a lot of attention to the day-to-day business of what goes on here at City Hall. I'm sure Mayor DeSimone is doing a fine job. So that's it. Basically, I mean, my closing comment would be that if there is a strong movement towards that, it should be at either a large citizens commission or maybe something that should be on the ballot as a referendum. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the speaker? Councilor Folwell.
Thank you. Do you make any distinction between a senior center and housing? If there were just a senior center?
I would distinguish that. I would say it's okay, as long as, and I'm not fully aware, I don't quite understand, like there's a part of the land behind the buildings that was, I believe, used as either a warm-up for golf or whatever. I'm not sure if that is part of what is being considered or not. Okay, but if the footprint doesn't expand beyond the existing buildings that are already there, then I would be in favor of a senior center there. This city, tends to squander things every now and then. That building, that when the bankruptcy occurred, that building was intact, and it's since been ravaged. The lockers were taken out of there. The YMCA put use those lockers. So there's not brand-new lockers, but there's some really nice lockers in the YMCA. But you can't go in that building, and as part of that commission, I walked through that structure, and it had been ravaged, and that wasn't necessary. We could have a building there that could be refurbished for much less than they estimate today, had we, looked to, use a little more foresight and vision. So, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have additional questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Good evening. My name is Peter Buell, 95 Mechanic Street, right across the street. I'm not in favor of the housing. I am in favor of the senior center going there. My concern on the housing is that we were told when it was purchased, there was a lot of housing scheduled there, and we wanted to keep it as a green space. And that's what we did. We said no housing, we made it green. And now this is just a complete change of what was originally presented. And on a big picture, I'm just wondering, have we looked at all the options as far as where the senior center goes? We've got to relocate the fire and police facility someplace. We've got at least one vacant school I know of, probably more. So I think we need a big picture view of all this, not just jump right in and do something quickly. That's it.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Vice President Dolan? Of course.
We did do a full feasibility study for where the senior center should be, and the Highland Park was the number one. So we did hire a firm to, all the city properties that we own and such, to do a feasibility study where the best options would be. So I just wanted to let you know that we did.
Based on that, I'm in favor of going to Highland Park.
What's that?
I'm in favor of putting the senior center in Highland Park. Anything else?
Additional questions? Okay. Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Scott Haran, Tiffany Street. Question, feasibility, there's no public transportation on the lot, correct? I mean, we said that was the best location. It kind of seems odd that there's no public transportation to Highland.
So there, as it stands now, there is no public transportation. I believe that conversations have been had with GATRA that would talk about the potential of extending the service down there, but again, this...
So you're going to rely on someone else's budget to bring transportation?
So this public hearing, Scott, is about the disposition of the property, not about...
It's only because she referenced it, so.
Well, she just, I think, just added some clarifying points to that.
I'm against any development at Highland. I'm not against the senior center. I'm just questioning the location.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else to speak against? Anyone else to speak against?
My name is Ann Fanning. I live at 7 Oak Ridge Avenue, right down the street from Highland Country Club, almost right next to it. I remember in 2018, this room was packed with people that wanted to buy Highland Country Club. They were opposed to what was going to go in there, housing. I really don't understand why now you're, as the gentleman said, cutting it up and leasing it out. Not selling it, but leasing it. I really wonder if people realize what the impact would be to the people in that area. They're going to be rehabbing the high school, from what I understand, the old high school, into apartments. We have 91 units on Mechanic Street at Sterling Lofts. I don't know how much more the area can take. That's basically what I have to say.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Mr. Waterman.
Would you comment on your feelings about putting a senior center there?
I think it's great. In fact, I wonder what happened to the man who said he could rehab it. I know that we have a high school that has all the trades. We have plumbing, electricity, HVAC. Why couldn't they help? That would cut down on costs. Because I heard 14 million. impact to me is a lot of money. So I think there's different ways you can look at it. Rehabbing, to me, would be the way to go. And I don't mind if it's there. They're 8 to 4, so they're not there all the time. Thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you, Ann. Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Mr. President, fellow members of the council, Attorney Michael McGann, offices at 144 Bank Street in Attleboro. I represent Jennifer and Frank Scioli. Mr. Scioli's in the back of the room here. With no disrespect to any member of the council or the mayor, when you say is someone for or against the project, I think you need to know exactly what it is. And as I stand here today, I don't know what it is. And I don't know that the members know what it is. And I haven't heard the mayor present anything, so beyond wanting to declare it a surplus property, there's not a lot there. They're going to lease the property to who? For how much? They're going to have a senior center there. What size? It's a 5-acre parcel. How many units? Is it going to be mixed units? What's the price? Is it going to be affordable housing? How many units? My client is not opposed to having a senior center there, but we don't believe that you need 5 acres, number one. You've got 2 Hodges Street, you've got a senior center right there. I don't know the number of units, but that's on less than an acre. That's 0.92 acres. So why 5 acres, number one? Number two, we certainly want an assurance that it would be only at that location, because my client lives at 92 Westgate Road. They abut the property at the end of the driving range. And naturally, they have concern. It's a lovely neighborhood. They have concern for the value of their property. They're not opposed to having a senior center there, but objectively, I don't think you can ask the public, are they in favor of something or against it without the particulars? Why should the city submit something and not be held to the same standard as a private citizen who was going to do this? If I, as an attorney representing a private citizen, came in front of you, rightfully so, you would have a lot of questions similar to the ones I'm asking. So again, with no disrespect to the mayor, I think she's putting a cart in front of the horse and putting you people in a difficult situation, because is there sewer at the property? Does anybody know that?
Is there what? I'm sorry.
Sewer
connection?
Is there what?
No. Do we know what it's going to cost to do that? Where's that money going to come from?
Councilor Holmes?
I've spoken to the water department. I don't know why the water department's not here to speak on this. I don't know why the planning department's not here to speak on this.
Councilor Holmes, clarifying questions, please.
Good questions. I have the same questions.
I mean, these are just logical questions that I think anybody would have. But how many units, let's start, how many units are they going to have there? They talk about traffic. The more units, the greater the traffic. Have all of the departments signed off on it? That's an essential
No,
function.
we're told to get rid of the land and not have any, and not know anything about it.
Diana, thank you. Vice President Dolan, then Councilor Lavoie, if you'll take some questions?
Sure.
So it's more of a comment. So this is the first step. So we can't get any RFPs or anybody to build on it until we put the property up for disposition. So then it would go, we would put out RFPs for people to bid on it and then come to us with their project, whatever that may be.
May I ask whether you could have the RFP with the request?
With what? I'm sorry?
With the request?
So just a reminder to the council.
That's not true. We did
Diana,
high school,
pardon me.
high school.
Diana, thank you. What we'd like to do today is get input from the public. We're going to take, as we do with every public hearing, we're going to take the input, we're going to discuss it. When it comes out of committee, I think there are valid questions raised here. A public hearing is not for us to get into a back and forth. That's what committee meetings are for. I think there are valid points raised on both ends. Mr. McGann, if you'd like to continue.
Thank you. I'd just like to, again, direct the council members' attention to less than 2 years ago when Mayor Hero wanted to have this as a, I think it's called a Article 97, and I think Article 97 protections under the amendments to the Massachusetts Constitution. That's been sitting and laboring in committee since December 6th of 2022, to my knowledge. I want to read you something out of the minutes of that meeting, submitted by Mayor Hero. He said, when purchasing Highland in 2018, the community and this administration, meaning his administration, were very clear that we collectively wanted to preserve Highland as an open green space in perpetuity. It was always the intention of the city to make Highland a park. We named the land Highland Park. It's been used as a park since 2018. The Highland Park Task Force of 2018 and 2019 identified uses limited to activities found on a park. There is hope among many that there will be a performing arts pavilion on Highland Park, which is consistent with the park's use, as similar pavilions are found in parks elsewhere. So that's less than 2 years ago. Now, I understand each council has new members, and they certainly have the right to vote the way they want. But I go back to my initial premise. I don't see objectively how you can say that a piece of land is surplus, and based on the premise that you're going to lease that property to somebody without knowing. I understand there's an RFP process, but can you not submit the RFP with the application so that the people would know? Maybe you can't. But the point is, you're asking to take a leap of faith to declare a piece of property surplus, and we all know how valuable vacant land is. I mean, that's a real gem. That's a real gem as a open space in Attleboro. You're going to lose 5 acres of it, and who knows what may next occur. One gentleman mentioned, creeping development. Do we have an assurance that that won't happen? Why do we need 5 acres? How many units are going to be there? How much is the rent going to be? Will it be profitable? Will it cost the city money? There's many, many questions that are common sense that I'm sure all of you have thought about. So I stand here on behalf of my client, just wanting you to know that, one, we're not necessarily opposed to a senior citizen center being there, but we want to know the particulars, and until we know that, we can't support it. Thank you for your time.
Do you mind taking another question?
Oh, absolutely. Any question?
Mr. Lavoy.
Thank you, President Delicio. So, have you ever represented like developers, things of that nature? Not ignorantly, I'm just not aware. Like in terms of like commercial developers.
I have.
Okay. Now, would you advise your clients to pay for plans and come up with sketches and renderings to develop property without the potential of even being able to potentially do it? For the city acting as in something they can't do.
Yeah, I would say respectfully that happens on a day-to-day basis because developers are asked, they want to rezone a piece of property or they want a special permit. They've got to go to the expense of having all that done. Look at the down on in South Attleboro, they want to convert the golf range, right? Well, that's a leap of faith. They've invested a lot of money into that, but each decision board, whether it's planning board, zoning, city council, they have a right to know the facts to make a conscious and objective evaluation of the presentation and whether you're for or against it. And I'd say without that information, you're taking a leap of faith.
Thank you. Councilor Angelo.
Thank you, President Delicio. Sir, the 5 acres that you're talking about, do you know what it is zoned as presently?
Single residence.
Okay.
Additional questions for Mr. McGann? Mr. McGann, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow members of council.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Good evening, councilors. I'm Richard Conti from 100 Berwick Road. I'm a butter to the property. And I'm here to ask you to just take a deep breath. You've got 5 acres of land that is prime land. And if that land were developed into a commercial enterprise, the city would realize taxes from real estate taxes, personal property taxes, so the business that owns let's say it's a restaurant. Let's say it's a big restaurant. You're going to get meals and meals tax revenue. You're going to get wages. You're going to get the personal property and the real estate taxes. If that was a sufficient operation, the number of taxes that would come in to the city on that 5 acres of land could pay a substantial portion of the bond to build the senior center. It doesn't make sense to me to take a piece of city land that has commercial potential, take it off the tax roll so that you can build a senior center with housing. I just hope that common sense prevails here, because when I was sitting there, I took a lot of heat for the amount of time that it took for us to deliberate a $250,000 request for design. Do you remember that? And I was trying to navigate the system to get some assurance that that $250,000 would be well spent. So instead, the state jumps in with $250,000, and look what happened. It's wasted money. So now, I'm asking you to think clearly. This piece of commercial land is got all the potential of being a beautiful restaurant that would be a crown jewel of the city of Attleboro, that would employ people, that would generate revenues, that would be a welcome to the neighborhood and the community. That completes my comments.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for our former colleague? Councilor Holmes.
Do you recall ever having stipulations before we purchased or before we decided to put up anything for disposition?
The 5 acres was intended to be commercial. There was a rumor running around, oh my goodness, it's going to be a gas station. That was a red herring, just to make people afraid. Oh my gosh, it's going to be commercial. The reality is, when it was a Highland Country Club, that was a commercial enterprise. It was zoned recreational because of the use. But the reality is, there's been several things on Highland Park. The parking lot that we were told was going to be temporary was never intended to be temporary. You know, I don't like the way that has gone down. Here, you have an opportunity to stop and take corrective action for the best of Attleboro, where income would be generated to be able to afford the things that we want to buy, including a senior center. So I see no reason why that land, 5 acres, could be zoned commercial and become a restaurant. And you have a new economic development director who has the ability to locate a firm that's willing to make the investment of a restaurant on that property.
Councilor Holmes.
So for us to do the disposition, just like I'm thinking about the old high school, did the council put stipulations about what County Street, the old high school, needed to look like before we did a disposition?
That's the beauty of the council. You can put any stipulation onto it that you wish, and it sticks until you take it off, because whatever you do, you can undo. So if you put the stipulation that this becomes commercial and that it's targeted towards a restaurant, and the economic development director comes back after 18 months and says, I have killed myself and I could not get a restaurant in there, then rethink it. But think about what other income opportunities could be on that 5 acres of land. Because your finances are restricted and there's a challenging financial period coming. It's coming, you know it's coming. And I predict it's 2028. But I'm an assessor, what do I know?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Angelo.
Thank you, President Zosio. Councilor Connie, thanks for coming. And what information or knowledge or studies that you have that a restaurant is going to survive there?
Restaurants work on a very small margin, 5% profit. The city of Attleboro is premier positioned for another premier restaurant. We're talking Blackington and the like, because it is, particularly if it has a function room, of which we've lost with the Highland Country Club, so weddings and etc. The hospitality industry is full of studies that like an economist, you know, on one hand and on the other hand. But what I've seen, Councilor Angelo, in the city of Taunton, a active economic development department reaching out and finding people that would make an investment and then partnering with them using city funds to get them up and off the ground and running has been an enormously successful formula for the city of Taunton, Massachusetts. It has totally turned that city around. Last year, they had a $40 million surplus and got $11 million in interest out of nowhere. That city has really turned itself around. So, yes, I know you don't like TIFs, and I know you don't like pilots, but you know what? Sometimes it is just enough stimulus for a business to be able to overcome the risk and take the chance. And I've seen it personally. I've seen it both with Catherine Fierick, who was a terrific economic development director, and I see it with Jay Patikas in the city of Taunton, who used to work for the state. And for years, we sat there asking the mayor to hire an economic development director. Now we've got one. So I think you've got a real opportunity here with this 5 acres of commercial land to be an income generator.
Additional questions? Councilor Fowler.
Thank you. Can you tell us, Councilor Conti, how long you estimate it would take to generate the $15 million or so that it would cost?
Well, if you think about the
Let
cost
me just finish my sentence, which is to create a senior center someplace.
So, do the math. You got 5 acres of land. The value of it in a commercial enterprise running is going to run somewhere north of $350,000 for $500,000, $500,000 there. The building is going to be worth $500,000. The personal property is going to be worth at least $250,000. The numbers are getting big. Then you've got the meals tax of all that's running along, and you've got a split tax rate. So you're going to be charging them more taxes than you're charging the residences. So the calculation of what are you looking for? 10 million? 20 million?
Either of those. Let's take the one in the middle.
If they generate $1 million a year, it's a big chunk off of your debt obligation for that senior center. And is it possible that they'll generate $1 million a year? Absolutely.
Additional questions for the speaker? Thank you, Rick. Always good to see you back here.
Nice seeing you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Do we have anyone else to speak against? Anyone to speak against? Yeah.
Laurie Kelly, 110 Berwick Road, so I'm at a butter. I was also on the committee with both Councilor Dolan and Councilor Holmes back when the city purchased this. I'm against disposing of it. I think the idea of this concept is ridiculous, as was said professionally by the lawyer. You are basically offering a almost $1 million property to someone we don't know to do something we don't know, and that's going to be restricting the access of all the citizens. That a perfect example was during the filming this summer. That property, that area was off limits. You couldn't go near it. You put a restaurant there, you put housing there, that's going to impact that parking, that's going to impact the access. We bought it as green space. We're putting apartments up all over the city with no yards. We're putting 40 units up next to the senior center with no parking. But the senior center has no parking. I think you all have to put your heads together and come up with something that's going to lead this city where it should be.
Do you have any questions for the speaker? Mr. Waterman.
So I asked another person the same question. Would you please share your thoughts about putting a senior center there?
Sure. So I went down to the senior center because I've never been in there. And the woman behind the desk asked me if I got parking. No problem. I got a parking space right out front. She said, we hope to have a new one in 5 years, but we don't know where or when. I said, great. I'm going to look around. I looked around. There was activities going on. She said to me before I walked off, oh, there's some trips that are in the bulletin, but we don't do the trips. They go through North Attleboro, and they go through Norton, so if you want to do those, go to there. So I said, oh, you collaborate with the other senior centers? She said, yes, we do the trips. So I thought, it seems like we have a functioning building with offices in place to address all the more discrete issues that some of the seniors have where they need to discuss in private. So we have offices. We have collaboration with Norton, who now has a brand new $10 million senior center. And if you read their minutes, back in August, I believe, they said they may have to cut staffing or hours because they don't have the staff to manage this beautiful new building. So are we going to build a beautiful new building and then cut down the access because we have no services? Or could we use the building we have and maybe do the, I don't know, how about that, the historical building that we're offering up to anybody that wants it? That if I read Sun Chronicle correctly, has a new heating system, has new bathrooms. So how come the senior center can't use that? So there are opportunities, and I just feel like let's just use this $1 million property. Let's have an idea.
Additional questions or comments? Questions, rather. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
Hi, Janice Stillman, 31 Lincoln Avenue. Some of you may be aware of a program around town, and I know it was at the library, where in 6 words you could describe your impression, your vision, your appreciation of the community of the city of Attleboro in 6 words. I'd like to etch this on your mind. Keep promises, no housing in Highland. That's all I have to say.
What's your name again?
Was it Janice Stillman you said?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you, Janice, for coming
Thank you.
out.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak against?
My name is Helene Kenny, and I live at 95 Mechanic Street. We're across the street neighbors from the park. And I'm very much in favor of the senior center being there and very much against the housing. My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard that it's going to be 4-story, so that would be like a mid-rise housing with the senior center underneath.
Again, at this point, there has been no specific plans that I've seen or that I'm aware of that are attached to this
I believe I read that in the newspaper, but
yeah,
I could be wrong. I wondered about the concept of leasing the land. What's the benefit to that? Are you going to have something built, and then all of a sudden you're going to say, okay, well, we no longer want the lease, so we'll have to get rid of the building? Or what benefit is there to leasing the land?
So this is an opportunity for us to take the feedback. We can take that question, we can work it into the committee discussions when they come. But yeah, certainly it's something that I'm sure Council Reynolds will present to the administration in terms of what they're thinking the benefit of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else to speak against? Anyone to speak against? Do we have anyone to speak neither for nor against? Joe?
Mr. President, city councilors, I guess I'm going to speak both for and against. Would that be appropriate? I have always been strongly in favor of moving the senior center there, as has been the recommendation of the feasibility study that was done. And if this proposal would somehow either accelerate that or make it more affordable for the city to get the senior center there, then I get, and I'm in favor of that also. But I do question the mixing of the senior center and senior housing in one building. I don't know, I just can't quite picture how that would work. And I'm not sure whether there's space there for, let's say, for example, 2 buildings, if it was going to work out better that way. So I can see some pros, some cons, but if it is a better way to fund the senior center, then fine.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Frosch? Okay. Joe, thanks for coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else to speak neither for nor against?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ken Salome, 84 Sentinel Hill Road, and I'm in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and I'm glad I'm not the lone wolf here speaking for or against. When this topic came up, I had to educate myself. And what I found is the Highland Country Club went bankrupt in 2017. There was a bankruptcy judge that authorized the sale to a Florida developer for $3 million, but the city had the option to buy the property. There was a public meeting which I attended. I and many other people spoke in favor of purchasing Highland Park, even though none of us had a clue as to what we were going to do with it. So after that, the former mayor formed a task group, came up with some recommendations. I looked for those recommendations. Supposedly there was 16 recommendations in a 10-page report. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I don't know what was in those recommendations. There was a article in the Sun Chronicle on February 21st, 2019, and the former mayor, and I'm going to be quoting him, Hero said, "Nothing in the report is written in stone." Quotation, "It was also communicated to the task force and to the public that ideas presented by the community members and voted on by the task force are not binding." He said in the report. In other words, the Future Use Task Force was put together to help the current mayor and future mayors determine what the land should be used for based on the wishes of the people today who supported the acquisition of the land. There are some constants in this world and there are variables. Since that time, due to the pandemic, there were a lot of early retirees, and these are things that are affecting housing. We've had an elevated housing demand, skyrocketing housing prices. We've had high inflation. We've had a tremendous housing shortage. The ongoing issues that I've constantly hear about is the lack of senior housing and a new council, the need for a new council on aging. When we looked at the high school to renovate it, to make it a better high school, we said, tear it down. So now there was a counter proposal. The mayor came in with a proposal. The council said, and I think it was rightly so, there was not enough details. So there was a counter proposal talking about renovating a couple of the schools. We're talking about changing the function of those schools, and I have some questions about them because I think the schools are old, that I know of. And you're looking to convert the function of them. So what is the structural integrity of those buildings? What code and utility upgrades are going to be needed? Are there any potential hazardous waste, lead, asbestos? And what are the costs? And the only reason I'm bringing this up because it seems to me it's the same thing, the same problem with the mayor's proposal. We don't have enough details. We don't have enough information. And to me, it's simply a matter of what's our demand and what's our supply. And the thing is to do is this. Match your supply and demand. Whatever makes economical, viable sense that satisfies our needs, that's the way to go. And the only other thing I can say about, and I'll give you an opinion, is to repurpose that existing abandoned, rundown, derelict building, and I'm talking about the clubhouse, to build a need doesn't violate the intent or the spirit of our buying Highland Country Club. And so that's all I'm going to ask you is go forward. Keep an open mind. Make the best decision. Make it economically viable. End of story.
Councilor Kovas.
Thank you. And I have one question, and as someone who was around back then when we were making this decision, do you see this in sort of what is roughly being proposed? And I very much agree that we have very little information before the council for anything that's being proposed before us. But do you see the conceptually the idea of senior housing on 5 acres of the 90 acres as conceptually very different than a developer from Florida putting duplexes on all 90 acres and developing the whole thing as conceptually two completely different things? Or
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the developer was going to take land that has not, quote unquote, been developed. It was, yes, the property is a developed because it is a golf course, so technically it is a developed piece of property. But we also have an existing building there. So the difference is we're talking about one existing building being converted for a different use versus tearing up the other 80-something acres to put in individual houses. Yes, there's a huge difference in my mind.
Okay.
Do we have additional questions?
I don't have a question, but clarifying statement. May I,
I'll allow
please?
it.
So I just want to make clear again that the 5.5, approximate 5.5 acres was divided up by the prior mayor. So it's totally off from the remaining, I think, I want to say 87 or somewhere around there. So that's what we're speaking about, the 5.5 acres that would be out for disposition, not to be sold, to be leased. And if that were approved, or not, if it's not approved through here, then it's just a dead issue. If it's approved, then the mayor has a right at that point to put out an RFP with whatever concept she has in mind. That RFP goes out, it comes back in, they look at it, they decide which one they like, it gets sent down here. And at that point, we can either say, hey, we're not going there, you can do this, or you can change that, or you can do this, or you can do that. And, or we can all just say no. But we can't give the option to the mayor to do anything with it at this time unless we give her the option to dispose of it as a leasing price. She doesn't want to sell it. It's to dispose of it as a lease with options for something to come in.
We can discuss
That's
this
all
further.
I just think people don't, at least that gives you an option to understand where it's going. We don't have full details. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you so much.
I guess the last comment is you got a building that's fallen down. What are you going to do with it? It's going to cost money to get rid of it. I mean, so, and, you know, if something like that doesn't get developed, then there's going to be pressures. There are pressures ongoing now on some very sensitive land that affects our water supply. If we can reduce some of that pressure, there's a domino effect. If you have elderly housing moving out of their own personal housing becomes available for families, then there is a little pressure on housing. If there was a magic wand on the housing issue, you guys would have waived it a long time ago. There isn't. There's just going to be little things that you can do, and this may be one of them.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Council Reynolds, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
Oh, my God. Can't really hear him.
Mr. Kerr, we're having trouble hearing you. Do you wish to speak at this public hearing?
Well, that's why I'm here, yes.
So please, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me though?
We can't really hear you at all. Give us one moment while we address the technical issues, please.
Perfect. Fix them away.
Okay. Mr. Kerr,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
we can.
Perfect. Virginia had asked me a question. I was trying to answer her question before I started, and Virginia, the chat is still muted, so I can't type in anything into the chat. So once you correct that issue, I'll be able to answer you in chat, just so you know. The concern that I have is that we have senior citizens, and we have citizens here that are trying to ask questions, and the way that you guys have set everything up, you guys refuse to answer questions. You guys give the excuse, well, we can't answer questions here. We're just here to take feedback. But you guys are talking about very important matters. And you guys are talking about things that are going to, affect senior citizens and many citizens and people of Attleboro. And then you're refusing to answer any questions about it and say, well, at a later time, we'll have some sort of a committee where you know that during that committee, there's no avenue for any of the citizens to be able to speak or ask questions. So you just keep pushing it off where people can't ask you guys any questions about this. They have to get information from the Sun Chronicle. Why don't you guys just have an avenue of just actually answering questions and trying to help the people instead of just pushing them off and telling them, well, at some other time we'll talk.
Mr. Kerr, do you have thoughts about this specific? Mr. Kerr, do you have specific thoughts regarding to the matter at hand?
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give feedback about
the disposition of.
It's very rude. Excuse me. Point of order. You cannot interrupt my time. I'm trying to talk about the matter at hand. And the last gentleman was just speaking about water and all of these different issues. I'm pertinent to the matter at hand. So please do not interrupt my time, sir. So that's the concern that I have is, you have people here that are just, you have a senior citizen woman that was just trying to speak, and she's saying, hey, I have some serious concerns about what you guys are going to be doing. And your immediate answer to her is, well, miss, we don't answer questions here. We're just going to vote on how we spend lots of money and parcel out land, but we're not going to answer your questions, even though they're valid. We'll talk about it some other point in time. That doesn't seem really helpful to the people of Attleboro. It doesn't seem helpful to anyone other than yourselves, quite frankly. It seems counterintuitive to the point of government. You guys are public servants. You guys should be here to serve us. And when we're asking you guys questions about really important matters, like that woman was, like a lot of people before, and you guys don't answer them and you push them off, I think it's counterintuitive to the point. So that was what I really wanted to make tonight. And I don't appreciate you interrupting me. You only seem to interrupt me. You don't do this to anyone else. It's because you're a bigot against disabled people. Thanks, Jay.
Do we have anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Do we have anyone else to speak neither for nor against? Council Reynolds, do you see any reason to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
I declare that public hearing closed. Madam Clerk, will you go on to the reading of the final public hearing for this evening, please?
That was canceled.
You have to open it.
Public hearing with the planning board to discuss the rezoning petition filed by Diane Rose, 1290 County Street, also known as Assessors Plat 148, Lot Number 4, to build for family.
Thank you. We're going to open this and then continue this until November 19th because we need to ensure that the planning board will be here this evening. That being said, I would entertain first of all, thank you to everyone who came out tonight to share your thoughts with us. Do appreciate it. I would now entertain a motion to go into committee of the whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do we have anyone who'd wish to address the council? Seeing none, I would entertain Okay.
I'd like to suggest that we make meeting minutes available on. I'd like to make a suggestion that we make meeting minutes available online. We already do agendas. We have the agenda center. I think it would help citizens actually follow along. I think there's nothing wrong with being open with government.
Yep.
And I don't know why they're not digital now.
I thought they were. We'll look into that for sure.
Now, some committees will, some committees won't. I know I serve with the traffic study committee, but I think everything should be digital, to be honest with you.
All committees, not just council.
Not just, yeah, even your own meeting minutes. Sometimes I have a hard time following along with what's being discussed and what's on it. You got, I'm on the traffic study. I'll find stuff that's not in before us, but it's on the agenda for tonight, and just help connect the dots, I think, for the citizens.
Yep, that's fair. We'll take that feedback back. I know Mr. Lavoy had a question.
Thank you. I'll do a quick, I agree with you, and with something that I've even recommended, almost like a public hearing setting where people can give an opinion online, like registered voters in Attleboro, so I agree. My question is, are you signed up for the civic alerts that the city offers?
I get them. You get the agendas, but you don't always get the minutes. You got to go up and pull them down, and the spots there. They're just not. It's not a ordinance, I believe. So the clerk doesn't want to do them unless we, I think we need to make it a standard operating procedure, basically.
Sure, so I'll work with our administrative assistant to ensure that we're doing what we can to get these minutes public for you.
Awesome.
We can, and this will go in the minutes as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerr.
Yes. Hey, Jay, I just talked to you 3 minutes ago, but about not trying to jump the gun and cut people off. And then immediately this gentleman's trying to walk over and you don't even give him a second, not even a second, because you're just in such an interest to just push along the agenda. You don't even want to give citizens the right to be able to speak. Nick, you just
excuse me, I was in the back of the room for the record.
Sorry, Mr. Haran.
Yeah, I was in the back of the room. I took no offense.
That's fine, Mr. Haran. Thank you.
Yeah, this is my time now. This is very disrespectful. It's my time to talk. Anyways, the other point that I'm trying to make is, Nick, you're sitting there and saying you're trying to open up things for registered voters in the city of Attleboro to be able to listen in and chime in on public meetings. You can't do that. You can't restrict it just to people in Attleboro. Look around you. Look around the cities around you. Norton, look at Taunton, look at all these other cities. They allow remote participation. And they do not discriminate against who is able to remotely participate. Because if someone in Canada wanted to remotely participate, you could totally cut them off. But if someone in Alaska wanted to participate, or someone in Hawaii wanted to participate, or someone in California, or New York, or Nevada, they wanted to participate, they have the same constitutional rights in those entities that they would have in the city of Attleboro. You can't just bar them and say, oh, no, only people in Attleboro are able to participate. That's why we're literally in court right now, guys. Like, what are you thinking? Are you guys serious? That's why we're literally in federal court as we speak right now. So I don't understand why this is so hard for you guys to just wrap your heads around. I feel like you just sit there and you don't really care. You don't care to read the law. You don't care to read the rules. Jay, you're like literally the vice chair of the Attleboro GOP, and you don't represent any GOP values whatsoever. You're a shame to Republicans. If you came to Florida, where there's actual real freedom, right, where real Republicans are, you would look like a joke. I started talking to people in the Attleboro GOP and bringing up concerns about the election, the election irregularities that I had witnessed. And I started talking about how I watched this man's vote be thrown out. And members of the Attleboro GOP, their first question was this black man an illegal? Are you guys fucking stupid? Why do you think illegal aliens...
Mr. Curdy, you have a minute and 30 seconds left.
Why do you guys think that illegal aliens are going to vote in a city election? Like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. You guys are just so friggin' moronic. You make Republicans look bad. You don't even understand what freedom is. And you guys try to represent this party and you just look like fucking morons.
Okay,
Get your
there's
shit
kids in the audience.
together.
Are you done? Thank you. I apologize for the words that were used. That does not reflect the city of Attleboro or this honorable body. I would entertain a motion to arise from Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I would entertain a motion to go into a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are operating in recess. We'll be back at 8:25. 2025. We will now go on to a reading of the mayor's communication.
October 15, 2024. Dear Municipal Council, I respectfully submit a communication from Chief of Police Kyle P. Hegney regarding the need for funds due to the retirement of an employee in September 2024. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $42,302.55 from the citywide reserve fund account to the police earned time account.
Public safety, please.
I respectfully submit communication from City Social Worker Kate Robinson regarding the donation of gift cards totaling $650 from Holiday Spirit Committee. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept these generous donations to the City of Attleboro.
City property and claims, please.
As you may know, in order to have more community-based and collaborative planning effort for July 4th celebrations, I asked Recreation Director Christy Clausen to work with Community Engagement Manager Kaylin Furtado and the Council Administrative Assistant Virginia Stewart to start a new Independence Day celebration planning committee. They are working with a group of eager volunteers to plan next summer's event, which will feature a fireworks celebration. The current estimated cost for fireworks, public safety details, and other items totals approximately $58,450. Although the group will be coordinating a community-wide fundraising effort for the event, they need to secure the services of a pyrotechnics company as soon as possible. The cost for the pyrotechnics company is $25,000. Many pyrotechnic vendors are already booking now for next summer's July 4th fireworks events across the country. In fact, many communities are already planning for 2026 Independence Day celebration for the country's 250th birthday. There is a balance of $10,898.52 in the fiscal year 25 budget account, Citywide Special Event Professional Services, which can be used for this purpose along with additional funding in 3 separate donation accounts once the funds have been raised. Using these funds to secure a fireworks display will allow the volunteer committee to begin their community fundraising work in earnest. Therefore, once we have raised enough funds in all funding sources in the fiscal year 25 budget to enter into a contract for the fiscal year 26 services, I hereby request your honorable body approve securing a purchase order from funds in account Citywide Special Events Professional Services account, Summer Celebration Event Special Event account of July, professional services, and the fireworks professional services account in order to sign a contract as soon as possible for a 2025 Independence Day fireworks display.
Finance Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Park and Forestry Superintendent Derek Corsi regarding a copier that the Animal Control Department would like to surplus. There was no interest in this office equipment from any of the departments, therefore I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition.
City property and claims, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Elections Officer Manager Sharon Fortune regarding a fax machine that the Elections Department would like to surplus. There was no interest in this office equipment from any of the departments. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to declare the following as surplus and available for disposition.
City property and claims, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from MIS Director Bill Lennox regarding the need to pay a fiscal year 24 invoice to Sensible Computer. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $320 from the Budget and Administration Professional Services account to the Budget and Administration Previous Year's Bills account.
Madam Clerk, I know initially we talked about this going to finance. I'm going to put it into IT and infrastructure, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I respectfully submit a communication from Attleboro Public Schools Director of Finance, Mark Furtado, regarding the following fiscal year 24 fiscal obligations that were not received in time to be processed in the normal fiscal year 24 business cycle. W.B. Mason, $1,308.40, and Dylan Yippies, $1,000.
Finance Committee, please.
I received a communication from the Attleboro Retirement Board concerning their recent 3-2 vote in favor of increasing the cost of living adjustment base from $13,000 to $14,000, in their request that your honorable body vote on the adoption of the same.
Finance Committee, please.
I respectfully submit for your consideration the following amendments to revised ordinance section 2-12, disposition of property, tangible supply. These amendments are necessary to, 1, simplifies the process with disposing of used firearms, ammunition, and bulletproof vests, which by law cannot be given to another city department, and 2, be in accord with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 15, which requires that tangible surplus supplies with an estimated value of less than $10,000 be disposed of pursuant to written procedures approved by the governmental body. Because our current ordinance draws a distinction between disposition procedures for tangible surplus supplies valued below $5,000 or above $5,000, the solicitor has recommended increasing the amount to $10,000 as set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 15. The proposed amendment has been reviewed and approved as to form by the solicitor. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body amend Section 2-12 of the revised ordinances by striking the current section in its entirety and replacing it with the following.
That'll go to City Property and Claims, and Council Reynolds, would you like to call for a public hearing on November 19th?
Yes. Second.
Thank you, motion is in order. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, motion passes.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Water, Courtney Allen, concerning amendments to the Water Department service fees. Periodic review of these fees is required by the terms of the Water Management Act permit issued from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection as a means of balancing water use protection, water conservation, and economic development to protect the Commonwealth's water resources for all to use. Included in the communication from Superintendent of Water, Courtney Allen, is a detailed description and reasoning for each proposed change. These proposed amendments have been reviewed and approved as to form by the solicitor. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body amend Section 16-10 through 16-14 of the revised ordinances as follows. Delete Section 16-10.2 in its entirety and place it with the following. Delete Section 16-10.8 in its entirety and place with the following. Delete Section 16-12.3 in its entirety and replace with the following. Delete Section 16-12.4 in its entirety and place with the following. Delete Section 16-12.5E in its entirety and replace with the following. Delete Section 16-12.5H in its entirety, replace with the following. And delete Section 16-12.11 in its entirety and replace with the following. Delete Section 16-12.17 in its entirety and replace with the following. Delete Section 16-12.251 in its entirety and replace with the following. And I'm going to go backtrack. That's delete Section 16-12.251A in its entirety. Delete Section 16-12.28 in its entirety. Delete Section 16-12.29 and replace with the following. And then finally, delete Section 16-13.6 in its entirety and place with the following.
We'll go to Public Works, and Vice President Dolan, would you like to call for a public hearing on December 3rd?
Yes, please.
Thank you, motion is in order. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Sincerely, Kathleen D. Simone, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now go into a reading of the clerk's communications.
We have received many renewal applications. We received 6 Class 2 renewal applications. We've received 2 Class 1 renewal applications, and we have received 1 Class 3 renewal application.
That will go to License Committee, please. It's a busy time of year for you, Mr. Lavoy. Looking forward to it.
We have received a letter, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not going to pronounce his first name correctly, from Redun Karen of 12 Kelcourt Drive regarding her concerns about the proposed new senior center at Highland Park. She has many questions regarding housing, security, parking, and access.
That'll go to Property and Claims with copies to all councilors, please.
And we have received the certificate of vote from the planning board meeting held on Monday, October 7th, 2024, stating that it was voted unanimously in favor to petition the Honorable Municipal Council to call for a joint public hearing with the planning board to amend zoning ordinance specifically to adopt section 17-10.17 MBTA Communities Overlay District.
Last page, yep, that zoning and land use, please.
Thank you. And finally, we have received a letter from Carol and Rusty DeConti of 95 Mechanic Street, Unit 1, stating the need for a new senior center is paramount, and Highland Park is a good site, but an apartment complex would cause more traffic and desecrate a valuable and irreplaceable green area.
City property and claims, and a copy to all councilors, please.
Alrighty, and that concludes my communication.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We'll now go into committee reports, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Thank you. Reporting for the Finance Committee, we have a number of items tonight. We'll start from the docket of October 15th, 2024. I move to approve expending such funds and any future grant amendments regarding the Attleboro Cultural Council fiscal year 25 allocation from the Massachusetts Cultural Council in the amount of $39,500.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
No matching funds are required for this grant.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to authorize the payment of $1,073 for the following fiscal year 24 fiscal obligations from the school department. H.L. Bloom, $65, Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce, $1,008.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
Previous year's bill.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? This will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, and from the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to adopt a dual system of classification of real estate taxation in accordance with appropriate general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
This is the first step in adopting the dual classification system. The next step will be to adopt the shift rate.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus? Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And from the docket of October 1st, 2024, I move to adopt a classification factor of 1.39 for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
I do have a couple. I will be fairly brief. I sent out to everybody the analysis, and everybody should have printed copies of what was sent out. This is 1.39 is the factor that the policy suggests that we should adopt based on the fact that the levy increased by 3.46%. Therefore, if we move to a shift rate of 1.39, that will increase the average homeowner's bill by roughly $206 by $206.80, which is a 3.5% increase, which roughly aligns to what the levy increased by. And just so everyone's aware, and I know this conversation tends to get heated, or it tends to be sort of a tough conversation every year. The shift rates we're talking about, and the difference between the current shift rate in the policy target, and the current rate is 1.41, and the policy target is 1.39. The actual impact to homeowners to continue to adhere to this policy is a $21 increase to homeowners. So by moving this around, we're only talking about on average $21. And the one thing I'd like to highlight at the end on the last page of this, and this was from last year's summary. The last bullet item says, our policy isn't a one-way street. In 2021, we deemed it prudent to decrease the shift from 1.35 to 1.34. We're currently at 1.41. So we've been moving up incrementally in quite a bit recently. It then continues, note, as inflation slows, we will need to reverse some of the recent tax shift changes. So last year in this summary, when we were talking about this and talking about the policy, we were saying as inflation slows, we're going to have to move this back a little bit. And here we are, the policy says we need to move it back to 1.39. And I think that makes sense. It's what the policy points to. In this policy, in the data here shows that we've been far more stable than our surrounding communities which have had huge sways up and down in their tax bill. On average, we've been increasing at a similar rate as other communities, but they've had huge shifts. Our tax bills have increased at a predictable amount year over year, and that's what this policy does for our residents. Taxes unfortunately are always going to go up. This policy keeps them relatively predictable. And so I encourage people to stick with 1.39. I know this is a tough discussion, but that's my argument, to stick with the policy in 1.39.
Additional questions. Mr. Angelo, then Mr. Tavares.
Thank you, President Delicio. Kudos to Councilor Kovas for doing a great job on this, and I really appreciate it, and for being available for questions, which is very helpful. Being in the industry that I come in, I've had customers not appreciate not having a raise or increases, and then all of a sudden get hit with a big one. And hopefully, with this approach, having a smaller one over the years helps people prepare better, and thanks for paying attention to that.
Mr. Tavares.
I'd like to echo those sentiments as well. Councilor Kovas, thanks for your work on this. It's always super helpful. I know last year coming into this after only a few months on the council was super helpful, and so this year I feel like I have a little bit more footing, but this is great. And so first comment that I'd like to make is that I agree with the rationale behind the policy, and I think it makes sense. Consistency is really important. I think predictability for residents, but also for businesses too. Looking at the commercial industrial rate as well. The one thing that I will mention is that I think the policy makes sense, but it's based on the foundational shift rate from the prior year being at something that we think is reasonable, right? So it only works if you're comfortable with the shift rate from the prior year in terms of figuring out, that difference of the levy and then applying that proportionally to the next year. So the one concern I think I would say that I would have, and I'm not saying I won't support this. This is definitely moving in the direction that I think we need to go, which is probably a little further close to that 1x split. But one of the big concerns, and I think this is maybe a little bit of a misconception more short-term thinking, in my mind, it's my opinion, but the commercial industrial rate, I think, is much more important than people realize. I mean, of course, we saw from the list and, talking with Julie the last couple of weeks that top 10 taxpayers are telecommunications companies, utility companies. They're probably not going to notice much of a difference, right, at the end of the day. Those top 10 and, probably, some commercial payers that come, pretty close to that top 10 range. However, I think for your mom and pop businesses, your average businesses here in the city that really do try to manage their finances as best as possible, that's something that does affect them. And I think there's a downstream effect as well. And I think if we move the splits too close to that 1.5 range, I think we're really asking for entrepreneurs and businesses who are willing to be here in the city to really rethink, well, should I be in Norton? Should I be in North Attleboro? Should I be in another town where maybe it makes sense to, whether it's own a property or even lease, because they see the effects of those. Whether you own commercial property or not, you're going to see the effects of this, same as you will on the residential rate, even if you just lease, because the cost is going to be passed down to the consumer at the end of the day. So I just worry about the erosion of the commercial base in the city over time, because now we're pricing some of those small businesses out of the city because they can't find reasonable locations to make things work. And even the landlords for those buildings, because part of the way that you value these commercial buildings, I'm sure Councilor Conti would appreciate this, is based on net operating income. And so the amount that they pay in property taxes is directly correlated to that. So I think it makes a difference on so many different fronts there on the commercial industrial side. So I'll stop my rant there, but I say that to say that I think we should be cognizant moving forward of what this rate is and how it also affects the commercial base, because if that continues to erode, then at the end of the day, the shift rate's not going to matter, because all the burden is going to fall on the residential side of things. So so that's just a concern that I have, just something to keep in mind as we have these discussions, not just this year, but in subsequent years as well. So.
Thank you, Councilor Copus, then Councilor LeBoy, then Councilor Sawyer.
And if I could just respond briefly, and I just wanted to make sure that you saw the slide that talked about the 50-50 personal property details. And I ended up, after your question last week, ended up doing a deep dive on the details of how, for purposes of mass appraisal, BLA will be accepting a method that gives equal weight to the property's net book value and its reproduction costs, new less depreciation. Depreciation. Yes, excuse me. Anyway, ended up looking at those details and understanding how, when Julie was talking about the 50-50 and how things are assessed now, it's for personal property taxes, things are based on what the item was bought for and what it would cost to replace the item, and split 50-50 that way. And so there's a slide on it. It doesn't really apply to this, but just so that you're aware, there's details on that, and the last 5 years or 10 years. I think I included 10 years in there.
And I appreciate that. Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much.
Councilor LeVoy.
Thank you, President Delicio. I share a lot of the sentiment from Councilor Tavares and from Councilor Cobus, and I appreciate your work on this. I do like the trend going, that this is going into in terms of coming down a bit. I agree with the 1X factor and, as close to there as we can be. Things to keep in mind, especially as I sat in the audience last year, not elected, was, these big taxpayers are comprised of 155 local families who pay rent. Some of these. One Wall Street is one of the ones on the top 10 list. There's 155 units in that building that, arguably not everyone in there can afford increases in rent. So it's things to keep in mind. Sometimes that commercial, industrial sentiment like overstimulates what some of these properties are. A lot of these are just everyday people who happen to rent, myself included. But the other thing I want to say is the times of this country are shifting in a different way. 10, 15 years ago, it was businesses leaving the country, and now it's businesses leaving the state. Attleboro is looking to come into Massachusetts, and what community they pick, who knows? The Paw Sox left for Worcester or Springfield, whichever, Worcester. And so, it's getting to the point now where a city to survive has to be competitive. You have to entice businesses from other communities. I mean, it's almost a sport. It is the utmost amount of competition, and you're talking about thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in tax revenue by enticing a business. So, I think when we bring that rate down, we start to become more competitive and get our foot on that board to entice bigger companies to come here. Attleboro's lost plenty of big companies over the years, and I think it's about time we start bringing some back. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Sawyer.
I understand the predictability of, because taxes are going to go up no matter what. And so this kind of gives the predictability of what people might have their taxes go up. But still, bringing a burden on the residents, higher burden on the residents, I feel is, our income only goes up so much. Things, prices everywhere else go up. And then have a certain 3%, go up in taxes of our housing. It's a hard time in just living, no matter where we are, and Attleboro is one of them. It's not an easy place to live. So I wonder, you talked about how this is movement for the residents is predictable, and I just wonder, I wanted to kind of get what your thinking was about the business tax rate, I guess, because I wonder if maybe it can be a little bit closer so that, it wouldn't be so much of a burden on the residents. So I'm just having a hard time in raising the taxes more on residents than businesses. And I'm just trying to understand. I'm sorry.
Council Cobus.
So, because the residential portion makes up over 80-something%, I forget what the actual percentage is now, we focus the bulk of it on predictability for the residential side and entirely focus on that predictability on the residential side increasing. And that's where housing prices increase and whatnot. So that's entirely where the predictability and stability focus has been on. And so it is, and that's all we look at really with this model. And that was based on the policy. This is a policy from back in the Kevin Dumas days.
Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. So when you were talking about the personal property, your slide that you added with the 50-50, and you said it doesn't really matter or apply, and I think it completely matters because
But it does, yeah.
as we know, when personal property depreciates, it's moved over to the residential part of the levy. So I don't know who knows that or who doesn't know that. So I think that makes a big difference, and unfortunately, we don't have the numbers to show year after year how much personal property was shifted. Now, and I'm not saying that the majority of the levy isn't residential, because clearly it is, obviously. But it's important to realize that year after year after year, depreciated personal property, that value of the levy moves over to the residential side. So that's one point. And, I understand what Councilor Tavares and Councilor Lavoie were saying. And, I get it, and I mostly agree, and I feel like since we've been on this I know we've been here at different times, but since I've been here from the beginning, and I know I was here with Councilor Cobus, and we started following, and Councilor Holmes, and everybody was here. Anyway, as I look around, I'm like, you were here too. So anyway, I think we've taken great pains to be predictable and to be careful and cautious and thoughtful of everybody that's affected by this. And it's a lot of work. And again, I appreciate your work, Council Cobus, on this every year, as usual. So while I am a taxpayer, resident, I'm not thrilled, but I think the 139 is where the policy puts us. And it makes it predictable, and, you know, we're at 1.41 now, we go to 139, and then we wait and see what happens next year and where it brings us. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional, Council Fowler.
Indeed, I thank you for this material, which I hope I have understood. But if I have, then in partial response at least to Councilor Sawyer, since the tax goes up with the value of a home, and the home values that go up are those at the higher end of property values in Attleboro. So the effect of this on, as I understand it, on lower income, lower valued homes is much lower than the average even. The real effect is on wherever the point is at which appraised property value really is increasing significantly. It's on those homeowners, and it's not that much. Have I understood that correctly?
Councilor Cobus?
That is a key point and a key argument that Stan Nasowitz used to argue with me all the time, that like when we were shifting this up, he's like, you're not saving the people, saving money for the people that you're trying to help, or people that with the $300,000 houses or the smaller houses. In reality, like by moving this down, you're really saving people, or by shifting the rate more onto commercial, the people you're really helping are the people with the large homes, in like the $1 million homes. Those are the people like that you're helping more. So your point is correct. Does that make sense?
It brings together two things that I was not bringing together in my mind.
Did that satisfy your question, Councilor?
I'm not sure.
Well, if you need clarification, we can come back. I know Vice
Fine,
President Dolan
please.
has a question or
Yes.
comment.
Thanks. So I don't agree with that.
Okay.
And the reason being is because, so, I mean, there was a lot of things that Stan, when he used to speak to us, that I didn't agree with. And I don't agree with that because things are different since Stan has been gone, right? So your person that had, you know, a $200,000 house, with the way things are going, their house value is huge now. When they have like a meek little cape, like my first house was a small cape, and I didn't pay a lot of money for it. I don't even know what it's worth now, but I'm sure it's probably 3 times. So I get what you're saying, because the percentage on a smaller amount is a smaller amount, and I get that, but I mean, I bought my house in 2010 and it's doubled in value, excuse me. So while I agree with that the percentage is smaller, I don't necessarily agree with the whole, as a whole. Anyway, thank you.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Before we call for a vote, I'd like to give my opinions from the chair as an at-large councilor, not as a president, as to not represent this entire body. I think this is the right discussion to have. I think, Council Cobus, again, the analysis that you do is phenomenal. It takes a very cumbersome topic and it kind of chunks it down and breaks it down. I think every action has an equal or more impactful reaction. And I think when for a while, we were willy-nilly, we didn't really have a plan. This policy had been in place, as you mentioned. We didn't start really following this policy until, I want to say, 2019, 2020. We're following it now. It makes more sense. There's more rhyme and reason to it. I think when former Councilor Conti was up talking about a potential restaurant, I don't know that this tax shift, one way or another, is going to drive businesses out of here. But if we're continuously putting it on the shoulders and the backs of businesses, it's gonna make it difficult for them to want to come here. And I think that's the balance, because the more tax that we shift, well, that's gonna impact the price of goods and services, which, who's gonna end up paying for that? That's gonna be the consumer, which are our friends, our neighbors, ourselves. So I think there's a lot to look at. I think the 1.38, I agree with Councilors Tavares and LaVoy. I'd like to see it go lower as we move that journey, but I think this is one, it's a good collaboration, it's a good middle ground, and I think that there's a lot that goes into this. And as we get closer to that 1.5, and this isn't doomsday type stuff, but as we get closer to that 1.5, if we ever get to that 1.5, it's gonna be really, really hard to come back. And that's gonna actually have just as negative effect on the residents as it will the businesses. So we just want to look at everything. I think what you do, Todd, here is you give us a lot of clarity, you give us data to back it up and make the decision. I'm comfortable with the 1.39 myself. All right, this will be a roll call vote beginning with, Madam Clerk?
It's going to go with Mr. Tavares.
Jonathan?
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
No.
Ms. Sawyer?
No.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
9 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you, motion passes.
Thank you. And President Delicio, if I may, I have two brief announcements.
Sure.
One is an announcement from the collector's office, and I want to just announce that the second quarter taxes are due November 1st, and please be aware the tax bill that you received in the summer contained 2 stubs and 2 envelopes for 2 quarters. If you do not have the stub from the summer, you can either go to the city website and pay that way, or go to the collectors, or go and visit the collector at City Hall and pay in person. So I know the collector's been receiving a number of calls and people stopping by. You can either pay online or stop by in person. And the second quarter taxes are due, again, November 1st. And then the second item to mention is that free cash has been certified, and we should be receiving a memo from the auditor either tomorrow or Thursday. And I'll invite Mason to come before the Finance Committee next Tuesday to speak to us about that, if there's anything to talk to us before he goes away for a little bit. So expect to have him come before us on Tuesday, if that's okay with you,
Yeah,
President Delicio.
well, it's your committee, so of course, I would just suggest that you invite the auditor as well, so she can maybe talk a little bit about that process. You may consider 6:30 start, because it'll be a long conversation. Up to you about that. The last thing I'll say is I don't think it's officially, DOR was here today, I don't think it's officially been certified yet. We're hoping for that to come in the next day or two.
Fair. But I would expect a memo from the auditor either tomorrow or on Thursday.
Thank you.
And that's it, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Todd, nice work. Councilor Fowa.
The IT and Infrastructure Committee has no business this evening. I call for a committee hearing at the next appropriate time.
Councilor Lavoy.
Thank you. Reporting for the License Committee from the docket of September 17th, 2024. I move to strike the following. to approve the request for keeping a stand in a public place application from Christopher Schultz on behalf of Jewelry City Steampunk Festival to host at the Lloyd G. Balfour River Walk Park on October 5th and 6th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
Nope. Obviously, the date has passed and the event was canceled pending a rescheduling in the spring potentially.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
That's all the business we have this evening, and we will call for a committee meeting for next appropriate time.
Council Reynolds.
Thank you. Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of October 15th, 2024. I move to accept the generous donations made to the Attleboro schools. I did read those.
Yep, you may waive the reading.
Second.
It's been seconded by, it was actually Council Holmes first. Little contest there. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
From the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to declare these police vehicles as surplus and available for disposition for trade-in or to sell. They are 2 Ford Econolines. They're both in poor condition.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
I have none.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
On the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to declare the following police department equipment as surplus and available for disposition to trade in or sell. And again, it's many things, windshield visors, light bars, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you may
which I
waive the
read.
reading of that.
Thank you, because I didn't read it.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll talk a lot. Thank you, Chief.
Any questions or comments?
I have none. No.
Okay, additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of September 3rd, 2024, I move to declare the following police department office furniture as surplus available for disposition. A flammable storage cabinet. It's a Uline BS30 and it's in poor condition.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments? Additional questions, comments? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms.
Hello,
Holmes?
Ms. Reynolds.
Ms. Holmes?
That's a yes.
Thank you. Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
That is all the business City Property and Claims has this evening, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Vice President Dolan.
Thank you. Reporting for Public Works Committee from the docket of October 5th, 2024. I move to appropriate $36,684 from DPUTNC other financing sources to fund sidewalk other financing sources to install a new sidewalk on Robinson Ave from Hardin Ave to Mendon. Additional funds are available through the Fair Share Funds.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
Note we discussed in committee.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of September 3rd, 2024, I move to approve the petition for a joint or identical pole locations from Massachusetts Electric, DVA, National Grid, and Verizon New England requesting to install one Joe pole on Oak Street and to install a new pole for a new service to a house.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
Note we discussed in committee.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And that's all the business for the Public Works Committee, and I call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. Reporting for Public Safety and Emergency Management. I just want to apologize to the president and my fellow councilors for speaking out of turn to the public hearing earlier. And I have two motions for this evening.
Hope you'll accept my apology.
No apology needed. We all get passionate about our issues in front of us, but it is appreciated.
From the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to approve expending of any such funds and any future grant amendments regarding the anticipated receipt of fiscal year 25 municipal road safety grant from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration from the Office of Grant and Research in the amount of $56,360.62. There is no matching requirement.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
We discussed during committee.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of September 3rd, 2024, I move to approve the following loan order. Ordered the $2,500,000 be appropriated for the cost of purchasing and equipping a ladder truck. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $2,500,000 under Section 7(1) of Chapter 44 of the General Laws and any other enabling authority, and issue bonds or notes of the city, therefore, and that the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary to carry out this project.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
We heard from the chief why this is necessary and needed.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? It's crazy the price of 2.5. I mean, when Council Reynolds and I started, I think it was under $1 million for
Yeah.
a fire truck. So,
President Delicio? Would it make sense, is this timely, or would it make sense for us to hold this for 2 weeks to wait and hear what free cash looks like, to see if we could purchase this at a?
I don't think so.
If this is timely, then I'm comfortable moving forward regardless.
It's timely because it's going to take 5 years. And when we think about next week, next week's a committee meeting. The following Tuesday is the 5th Tuesday, where it's a special meeting only for technically 4 public hearings. So we wouldn't be able to even vote it out of committee at that point until the middle of November. Then we're looking at after Thanksgiving or the week of Thanksgiving to vote it out of committee.
I'm comfortable moving forward. Thank you.
I appreciate the thought process, so.
Okay.
All right, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion passes.
That concludes the business this evening. I'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Councilors. Councilor Angelo.
Thank you, President Delicio. We have no new business for Personnel Veterans Human Services Committee. We call for a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That didn't seem right.
I know, huh?
Councilor Sawyer.
Thank you. Reporting for Zoning and Land Use Committee. From the docket of September 3rd, 2024, I move to approve the special permit application from Sturdy Health to 211 Park Street for a helicopter landing pad as an accessory use.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any comments?
This was talked about in committee, and to show how they're going to put the landing pad and to really help the residents in the area, and their building, I went by their great big building to put the landing pad higher and help with the larger helicopters that are also coming in. So I would hope that we would vote this through.
Councilor Lavoy.
Sorry, just to clarify, I guess, kind of for the public and just as a whole, it's not gonna go on top of the building currently being built. This would go on top of the next expansion post that new building.
Yeah, I believe that's what we
Excuse me
said.
for speaking out of turn then.
I'm sorry.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Cobus.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
From the docket of September 3rd, 2024, I move to strike the following due to a withdrawal of the application. I move to approve the rezoning petition from WHM Capital LLC at 182 North Main Street to rezone Assessor's Plat number 49 from industrial to two-family residential.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No, they just withdrew that application.
This will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Tavares.
Mr. Tavares?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes? Vice President Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Lavoy?
Yes.
Ms. Foa?
Yes.
Mr. Cobus?
Yes.
President Delicio?
Yes.
11 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
For the docket of October 15th, 2024, I move to hold a joint public hearing with Planning Board at the special meeting on October 29th, 2024 regarding Mass General Law 40A S.3A Rapid Transit Zoning Ordinance Amendment.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
Any comments?
This will be a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
That is all the business for the Zoning and Land Use Committee, and I look forward to a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Waterman.
Traffic and Transportation has no business tonight. We'll meet at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. And Councilor Tavares.
Reporting for ordinances, elections, and legislative matters from the docket of February 6, 2024. I move to strike the following proposed amendment to the city ordinances, 2-22 Diversity Commission.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
No comments, we discuss in committee.
Additional questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, this will be a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
That concludes the business of ordinances, elections, and legislative matters. We look forward to a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. I will call committee meetings at the next appropriate time for the special committees. There's no old business. There's one piece of new business for which I will recognize Councilor Boyd.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to refer the following for study and recommendation: to install a new stop sign at Jefferson and Fifth Street, creating a three-way stop.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
This was brought forward to me by a resident on Fifth Street. The problem they're dealing with is traffic going through at a high rate of speed, and there's been multiple animals and of personal and wildlife categories hit. And I felt it was more pressing to get in, given what we've already approved with County Street. Should apartments go there, we're gonna have a parking lot on Fifth Street, so I would agree that a measure to slow down traffic there might be pertinent to public safety.
Councilor Reynolds.
We've brought this before the Traffic Study Commission. I mean, I think it's come over a couple of years, it's come out, and they always say no to it. So that it's just got to be the way that it is. And I think the chief went in on that the last time as well.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions, comments, concerns on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. We will send this to Traffic and Transportation. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:18. Thank you, everyone.